I just want to talk about God's work in your life, because we would think that growing up as you did, an MK, right in that jungle, you'd be ready for anything. But you did come back to, it's probably unfair for me to say civilization. You came back to Canada.
Right.
That must have been a huge adjustment.
It was, yeah.
And made your life here for some time. I want to show a family picture.
Okay.
Your wife is from Kansas.
She is.
And now this picture, your kids are grown, because this is, I think, from about 2007.
This is a few years back. Yeah.
So Cynthia, your wife, and who are your children?
Katie's the oldest. She's now 14. Josiah's in the red shirt, and Stephen's in the blue shirt there.
Take special note of Josiah in the red shirt. This family really grew up in California.
My two older children were born in California. My youngest was born in Southeast Asia.
Josiah?
Stephen.
Oh, Stephen was the youngest, okay. Now, I just can't miss this chapter, because God allowed something that took my breath away for, I don't know, a couple of pages at least, with your son Josiah, before you returned to Indonesia with your family.
Yeah. Well, Cindy and I were ready to move. We were ready to go, give our lives away. But we had no idea how challenging the future was going to be. And we had no idea that we were going to have to be, to learn what it means to live by faith. And I think that God knew that. And so on the very day that we were getting ready to leave and go to the airport and fly overseas to give our lives to people in a faraway place, God gave us a little life lesson that would forge a new form of faith in us that we would never forget or lose grip of. And on that morning, in the house we were staying in, there's a swimming pool. And I went out that morning and swam some laps and came in and showered. And then I just forgot to close the door. And my little boy, who was 8 months old at the time, just had learned how to crawl. He crawled out that door and decided to take a swim. And sometime later, and we don't know whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, you know, because we were getting ready to go to the airport, packing our carry-on bags. It was a pretty chaotic morning. And Cindy said, "Where's Josiah?" And we started looking all around the house and couldn't find him. And suddenly Cindy said, "Check the pool." And I went running outside, looked down, and he was at the bottom of the deep end, just laying there over the pool drained, curled up in a fetal position. And I jumped down into that water, swam down, picked him up off the floor of the swimming pool. I swam up, and as my face emerged out of the water, I could hear my wife screaming. And boy, this was 12 years ago. I remember it like it was today. But my brother took him. My brother knew CPR. He took him out of my arms and immediately squeezed the water out of his lungs and tried to breathe life into him. 1 minute after another came and went, and there was no response.
In the book, it says he drowned. He
drowned, and 7 minutes, still no response, except for one hiccup, and that's my brother. My brother did not stop giving CPR for 7 minutes until the firefighters arrived, and they just rushed him out of the house and airlifted him and me to Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. And even before the helicopter hit the roof of that building, these men had leaped off the helicopter and were rushing him in. He was having severe seizures, and rushed him into the hospital room, and the doctors were doing everything they could to revive him, but nothing was happening. They tested his brain, and then came out an hour later and just told me, we've looked at his brain, we find no response.
Doctor said it would take a divine intervention for there to be life.
And the physician at Children's Hospital later told me that they were preparing us for the news that even if our son would, even if he could be kept alive artificially, mentally, he would never be back. He would be a vegetable for the rest of his life. But the elders of our church came, our friends and family came, people flew in from overseas. The word of this...
100 people. Is that right?
Over 100 people came to the hospital that day, and they didn't leave. They came, they huddled up, they held hands, and they just started praying and just crying out to God for Josiah's life. And the elders of my church went into the ICU, and they laid hands on him, they prayed for him, and one of them felt his toe move during that prayer. And that was the first response. This is on the second day.
The next day?
And this is the second day. And in a matter of hours, just color began flooding back into his body. And he opened his eyes and just looked around. He's like, where am I? And then on the third day, then the doctor said, you know, he said, I've never seen anything like this. He said, I don't know what to say about this. He said, I told you 2 days ago that if he was going to recover, it would need divine intervention, were his exact words.
Yes. And that wasn't the only divine intervention, because you had a special encounter.
I did.
That shaped you for all that was to come.
I did. I had an encounter with God. And in the trauma of that moment, as Josiah was lying on the carpet, my brother was trying to revive him, I fell to my knees and I just cried out to God. And I just lifted my hands up to heaven and said, God, please. And I just, with desperation, I said, God, please save my son. And I just was flooded in this moment. And as I write in the book, I don't know what to make out of this. I don't know. You know, I bet a psychologist would have a way to describe it, or something. All I know is that I had such a profound, miraculous experience of God's presence and God coming to me and wrapping me up in His comfort and His strength. And I shared this moment with God where He Himself, I just tapped into, I just caught a glimpse of God's, His grief, His suffering, as He watched His Son, being killed on the cross. And I just had this moment of incredible fellowship with God. And to this day, it has profoundly affected my life and has totally transformed the way that I view reality.
What year was that, Paul?
That was in 1999.
99.
Yeah.
And here's what you would go to. The largest Muslim country in the world. Clearly no picnic. In the book you say, within a few weeks we were robbed, used, lied to, and cheated, and you killed 17 rats in your home.
Yes.
Wow, what a start.
Yeah.
But a vision was birthed.
It was.
A brave vision.
Well, you know, I was working as the principal of a school there, and meanwhile I was just going out. I was going out in the community. I was trying to research about education in that country, and I was tapping into the desperation that people have for better schools. And God just infused into my heart a dream in order to start Christian schools for Indonesian children, in order to help children to rise up out of poverty and discover what God has created them to become, and to create these learning environments where children would tap into what their design, as God has created them uniquely, and that they would rise up and grow in creativity and character and faith, and rise up into their own society and change their own world.
I want us to look at the visuals, some of the pictures of what's been happening over the last more than a decade. A flagship school, this is how you say it in the book. The vision was for a flagship school, quote, a new model of transformational Christian education that would shape Indonesia's future leaders. And it's clear from these beautiful color pictures that you didn't go underground in a Muslim country. Look at the newspaper outfits, I love those. How is this possible? That you get away with this?
Well, here's the key. First of all, we're not secretive about who we are and what we do. Jesus said, put your light out so that people can see it and give glory to God. And from day one, that's what we've done. And we've come to communities and just said, we are willing to open a Christian school here because we recognize your need for a better school. Or perhaps for the first school. We've started many schools in villages or towns where they have no school at all. And we've said, but we are a Christian organization.
But you've trained Muslim teachers as well.
We do. We are serious. Schools for us are not just a platform to do something else, but we're passionate about children. We're passionate about quality education.
Good education.
And people know that. People are very intuitive, and they can sense if we actually genuinely love them, or if we're just there, for some ulterior motives, with an agenda.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're there to love their kids and to set their kids free, and to give their children a chance to rise up out of poverty, and to grow, to become leaders and people of influence in their world.
And you've had teachers come from America to be part of the work.
We have. We've had teachers come from out here, and God has used them profoundly. And so, and we're still looking for people that might want to come out. If perhaps there's a teacher who understands how to disciple children, and is has a lot of experience, but yet God is infusing a dream into that person's heart to take their skills and to go overseas and give that to some extremely impoverished communities. We can find a way for that person
to use their
to
gifts.
Use that, to go and start a school, or perhaps be a teacher, or train teachers. We train hundreds of teachers in our training program.
2,900 children have been impacted so far.
So far, but we've just started.
And they're beautiful.
They
Special
are.
passion for teenagers right now.
Yes. I was in youth ministry in the past before I went overseas, and there's just something there. In fact, when we started our first school, I wanted it to be a high school. And my friends on the original board that we had started, they said, no, we need to start with early childhood and first grade, elementary school. And I was reluctant to do that, but now I understand the wisdom in their counsel. And so we work with small children, 3, 4 years old.
They're beautiful.
They are.
mustardseedcanada.org.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want to put the excuses away and respond, in case God is tugging and saying, I got a dream for you.
That's right. Yeah.
A certain risk. Stories of so many people, even a woman in Toronto who is helping Chinese immigrants with her English club.
Yep, right.
Lots of ways that people have responded with their gifts and talents to God's call. A wonderful book available everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to quote you
Okay.
from the book. With souls on fire, men and women who dream God's dreams are advancing against the forces of evil that wage war against God and His creation. This can be your story. You can be part of God's story wherever you are today. A certain risk can be a launch pad. I really hope you'll get your copy and read it and pray for this man, Paul Richardson, and his family, making such a huge difference in our world. I hope you've inspired many.
By God's grace only. Thanks for having me today.
Stay with us. We'll be back.